Good morning. This is your stats sensei, Mr. Spensei, and we're going to go through a warm up on confidence intervals, specializing on getting the T star. So, an service provider collected a random sample of 250 of its customers from its customer base. So, in this case, N is 250. That's going to be important. Might as well write it down where it belongs. Of 753,000. From the sample, it was found that the average amount of time spent online was 51.25. So the average tells us this is our mean, and it came from our sample. So this is our sample mean, or X bar, with a standard deviation of 11.5 hours. All right, this is also from the sample. So this is our sample standard deviation. Construct a 93% confidence interval for the amount of time spent online. Well, here we're not going to go through the entire process of getting our conditions and defining our parameter. We're just going to focus on trying to get our T star value. So first off, our equation is X bar plus or minus T star S divided by the square root of N. So our sample mean plus or minus the number of standard deviations, the actual standard deviation divided by the square root of N. So we need to calculate T star. Well, to do that, we're going to have to go to an inverse T, and it's going to ask for our area. Our area is, when we put it in, we're going to have to go 1 minus 0.93 divided by 2, and then it'll ask for our degrees of freedom. Well, let's go ahead and get to that. So second vars, inverse T, parenthesis 1 minus 0.93, close parenthesis, divided by 2. Super important to have the parenthesis. And it's going to ask for our degrees of freedom, which is simply our sample size minus 1. So 250 minus 1. I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Which is 249. Not that we can either type in 249 or the 250 minus 1. And we get 1.8197. So our T star equals 1.8197. So at that point, we're going to go ahead and plug, and we're going to plug into our equation. So we have 51.25, our sample mean, plus or minus our T star of 1.8197 times our standard deviation of 11.5 divided by the square root of 250. So our interval, stat, test, drop down to number 8, T interval. Our sample mean is 51.25. Our sample standard deviation is 11.5. And we have everything we need in there. And we end up getting 49.926 to 52.574. So this is our interval. 49.926. So we're saying we're not exactly sure where the sample mean is, the population mean is, but we are 93% confident that the number of hours spent online is somewhere between 49.9 and 52.574. All right, next one, construct a 97% confidence interval. Once again, we have the same equation. This is just practice writing it down. So X bar plus or minus T star S divided by the root of N. X bar was 51.25. Our sample standard deviation still hasn't changed. Our sample size is still to the 250. And our confidence level has the only thing that changed in this 97%. Well, by changing it to 97%, our T star is going to change. We're still going to do an inverse T, and it still asks for our area, and our area is going to be 1 minus the 0.95, excuse me, not 0.95, 0.97, 1 minus 0.97, divided by 2. And this lasts for our degrees of freedom, which is still going to be exactly the same, 250 minus 1. Or we could have just written the 249, either one. So let's go ahead and do that. So second vars, inverse t, parenthesis, 1 minus 0.97, close parenthesis, divided by 2. Again, those parentheses super important. Degrees of freedom, you can either type in 250 minus 1, or you can just type in 249. Either one is fine. And it gives us 2.1825. So our T star equals 2.1825. When we go to plug it in, we have an X bar of 51.25. And we have a plus or minus. Our T value, the number standard deviation, is 2.1825 times 11.25 over the square root of 250. And if we're going to go our intervals, stat test, drop down to number 8, which is T interval. We have our sample mean in, we have our sample standard deviation. There's our sample size. We need to change that confidence level to 97%. And I end up getting 49.663 to 52.5837. So my interval 49.663 to 52.837. And these are the number of hours. And it says, based on the intervals you created, is it plausible that the customer spend less than 50 hours online? Well, the answer is, well, this one here goes below 50, so that's plausible. And here the answer is 50. So yes, it is plausible that the customers spend less than 50 hours online. Why? Because remember, it says justify your response. That's the most important part. Because 50 lies within the interval. All right. Appreciate you watching. Hope to see you on the next one.